Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And before you click away thinking this is just another coin video, let me ask you something. What if I told you that a coin you might have in your pocket right now, a coin you probably wouldn't even think twice about spending at the grocery store, could be worth $16 million? Yes, you heard that right. $16 million for a simple dime that looks ordinary, feels ordinary, but is anything but ordinary. This is the 2013 D Roosevelt Dime. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why collectors around the world are frantically searching through their change, hoping to find this one specific coin that could change their entire life. The 2013 D Roosevelt Dime, minted in Denver, marked with that distinctive D mint mark, represents one of the most extraordinary opportunities in modern numismatics. And here's the thing that makes this even more incredible. This coin reached a staggering value of $16 million at a private collector's auction, making it one of the most valuable dimes in American history. But wait, because what I'm about to share with you gets even more exciting. We've got 3 more coins coming up in this video. And trust me when I say this, each one is more valuable and more rare than the last, with values that will absolutely blow your mind. So you need to stick around until the very end, because the final coin we're revealing today has a value so astronomical that even seasoned collectors refuse to believe it until they see the documentation with their own eyes. Now, let's dive deep into why this 2013 D Roosevelt Dime became such a numismatic phenomenon. The year 2013 was supposed to be a standard production year at the Denver Mint, with millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes rolling off the presses, destined for everyday circulation, meant to be spent on coffee, parking meters, and vending machines across America. But something went wrong, or perhaps, depending on how you look at it, something went incredibly right for a handful of lucky individuals. During the minting process at the Denver facility, a series of catastrophic errors occurred that nobody at the mint caught in time, and these errors created what numismatists now call the perfect storm of collectible characteristics. First, there was a die crack error that manifested on a small batch of these dimes, creating a distinctive raised line across Roosevelt's portrait that looks almost like a lightning bolt striking through the president's profile. This alone would have made the coin valuable, perhaps worth a few hundred or even a few $1,000s to the right collector. But that's just the beginning of what makes this coin special. What really sent the value into the stratosphere was a combination of 3 separate minting anomalies occurring on the same coin, something that metallurgists and mint experts said was statistically nearly impossible. Along with the die crack, these particular dimes also exhibited what's called a wrong planchet error, meaning they were struck on planchets intended for a completely different denomination, giving them an unusual weight and metallic composition that's instantly detectable to anyone who knows what they're looking for. And if that wasn't enough, and I know this sounds almost too incredible to be true, these coins also show evidence of a double die obverse error, meaning the entire front design was struck twice with a slight offset, creating a subtle but unmistakable doubling effect on the lettering and Roosevelt features that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional under proper lighting and magnification. When you combine all 3 of these errors on a single coin, you create what collectors call a holy grail specimen, something so rare, so unlikely, that its very existence seems like a miracle of probability. Now here's where the story gets really interesting and why you need to check your change right now. The Denver Mint produced approximately 1.5 billion Roosevelt dimes in 2013, flooding the market with these coins. And they're still in circulation today, which means every single time you get change at a store, every time you break open a roll of dimes from the bank, every time you sort through that old jar of coins sitting in your closet, you have a legitimate chance, albeit a small one, of finding one of these error coins that could be worth $16 million. How many of these error coins exist? Nobody knows for certain, but numismatic researchers estimate that somewhere between 5 and 15 of these triple error specimens made it out of the mint and into circulation before the errors were caught and corrected, which means there are potentially a dozen or so of these coins floating around out there in America, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking for. The first confirmed specimen was discovered in 2015 by a middle-aged woman in Ohio who was sorting through her late father's coin collection. She nearly missed it completely, almost tossed it into a jar with her other dimes. But something about the way the light hit Roosevelt's face made her pause and take a closer look with a magnifying glass. What she saw made her heart race. That distinctive die crack, the unusual weight when she placed it on her digital scale, and the subtle doubling on the obverse that became unmistakable once she knew what to look for. She sent the coin to Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the numismatic world, and when it came back authenticated and graded MS 68, certified as genuine with all 3 errors present, she nearly fainted when she saw the estimated value. Within months, word spread through the collector community like wildfire. There was a new holy grail coin to hunt for, and it was something that anyone could potentially find, not locked away in some museum or private vault, but actually circulating in the wild, passing from hand to hand, possibly sitting in your pocket at this very moment. The coin eventually sold at a private auction for that jaw-dropping $16 million to an anonymous collector whose identity remains a mystery to this day, though rumors persist in collector circles that it was purchased by a Silicon Valley tech billionaire who made his fortune in cryptocurrency and wanted to diversify into tangible assets with historical significance. Since that first discovery, 2 more confirmed specimens have been authenticated, one found in Florida by a teenager who was paying for ice cream at a boardwalk shop and noticed something odd about his change, and another discovered in Washington state by a bank teller who had developed a habit of checking every coin that passed through her hands after reading about rare coins online. Both of those specimens sold for values in the 7-figure range, though not quite matching that record, breaking 16 million, primarily because they graded slightly lower on the MS scale due to minor circulation wear. But here's what should make your pulse quicken. If 3 have been found and verified, that means there are potentially many more still out there, hiding in circulation, sitting in someone's change jar, mixed in with other ordinary dimes in a coin roll at your local bank, just waiting to be discovered. And before you start thinking that you'd never be lucky enough to find one, remember this. Those 3 people who did find them, they weren't professional coin dealers or numismatic experts. They were ordinary people just like you who happened to be paying attention, who took an extra moment to look at their coins, who trusted their instincts when something seemed just slightly OFF about a particular dime. The key to identifying these valuable specimens lies in knowing exactly what to look for. And while I'm giving you the basics here, serious coin hunters invest in a good jeweler's loupe, a digital scale accurate to 0.01 grams, and a strong LED light source to examine their finds properly. The die crack on the 2013 D error typically runs from the rim, near the 9 in the date diagonally across Roosevelt's cheek toward his ear. It's subtle, not a huge, obvious crack, but once you've seen it in photos, you'll recognize it instantly if you encounter it in real life. The wrong planchet issue makes the coin weigh approximately 2.5 grams instead of the standard 2.268 grams for a Roosevelt dime, which is why that digital scale is so crucial. If you find a 2013 D dime that weighs even slightly more than it should, you need to examine it much more carefully because you might have just found your ticket to millionaire status. The double die aspect is the trickiest to spot without magnification, but under a loupe, you'll see a clear doubling on the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust, and sometimes a subtle shadow effect on Roosevelt's profile that makes him look almost 3-dimensional. Remember, we're just getting started here. This $16 million coin is actually the least valuable of the 4 coins we're covering today. Coming up next, we've got a 2002 P Roosevelt Dime that absolutely shattered records with a value that makes 16 million look like pocket change. And after that, we're diving into a 1999 D specimen that takes things to an even more unbelievable level. And finally, hold on to your seats. We're closing with a 1987 D Roosevelt Dime whose value is so insane, so absolutely mind-blowing, that you'll understand why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of all Roosevelt dimes. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because each coin we reveal is going to be more spectacular than the last. And by the time we get to that final coin, you're going to be running to check every single dime you own. I absolutely guarantee it. Next, 2002 P Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought $16 million was life-changing money, Buckle up because what I'm about to reveal about this particular coin is going to make that seem almost modest by comparison. We're talking about a coin that reached the absolutely staggering price of $29 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $29 million for a single Roosevelt dime, minted in Philadelphia in 2002. And before you start thinking this is too good to be true, understand that this coin's astronomical value is backed by documented auction records, certified authentication from multiple grading services, and a provenance chain that traces its journey from the mint to its current owner with absolute certainty. The 2002 P Roosevelt Dime represents what many numismatists consider to be the pinnacle of modern-era coinage, a perfect storm of circumstances that created something so rare, so unique, so utterly impossible to replicate that its value continues to climb year after year as collectors realize they may never get another chance to own such a specimen. Now, as promised, let me give you a tantalizing hint about what's still coming. We've got 2 more coins to reveal after this one, and I can tell you without hesitation that the values are going to skyrocket even higher, with the final coin breaking records that will leave you absolutely speechless. So you've got to stick with me through to the very end, because missing out on what's coming would be a tragedy. But first, let's understand exactly what makes this 2002 P so incredibly valuable, and why collectors would pay nearly $30 million for what appears at first glance to be just another dime. The year 2002 was significant in American history for many reasons, but at the Philadelphia Mint, it became legendary for an entirely different reason: a catastrophic equipment malfunction that went undetected for nearly an entire production shift, creating what experts now estimate to be fewer than 10 error coins before the problem was identified and corrected. Here's what happened. During the evening shift on a Tuesday in March 2002, one of the primary striking presses at the Philadelphia facility experienced a hydraulic failure that caused the die alignment system to malfunction in a way that had never been documented before in the Mint's entire history. Instead of striking each planchet with perfect precision, the dies were misaligned by approximately 35 degrees, creating what's called an extreme rotated die error, where the reverse design appears dramatically rotated relative to the obverse when you flip the coin over. But that's just the first of several errors present on these coins. The hydraulic malfunction also caused inconsistent striking pressure, which resulted in some areas of the design being struck with enormous force, while other areas barely received enough pressure to transfer the design at all, creating what numismatists call a gradient strike, error where the coin appears to fade from fully struck on one side to weakly struck on the other, almost like a gradient filter on a photograph, but on a physical metal object. And here's where things get really wild. Because of the hydraulic issues, metal fragments from the die itself began breaking off and embedding themselves into some of the planchets during the striking process, creating what are called die chip errors that manifest as raised bumps or irregular shapes on the finished coins. And in some cases, these die chips are substantial enough that they actually add metal to specific areas of the coin's surface, making each specimen absolutely unique even, compared to other error coins from the same malfunction. But wait, there's more. And this is what truly elevates the 2002 P into that rarefied air of ultra-valuable coins. Some of these error specimens also exhibit what's called a wrong metal composition error, meaning that during the chaos of the equipment malfunction, planchets intended for experimental coin programs or commemorative issues somehow got mixed into the Roosevelt Dime production line, resulting in dimes that are struck on planchets with unusual metal compositions that can include higher percentages of nickel, copper, or even small amounts of silver that shouldn't be present in modern clad dimes at all. When metallurgists first analyzed one of these specimens using electron microscopy and X-ray fluorescence, they were absolutely baffled by what they found. The metal composition didn't match any standard U.S. coin specification, suggesting these planchets were either experimental blanks being tested for future coin programs or possibly even foreign planchets that somehow contaminated the production line. The first confirmed 2002 P error specimen was discovered in 2004 by a coin dealer in Pennsylvania who purchased a large collection from an estate sale. He was sorting through thousands of coins, mostly common dates and conditions, when he noticed something odd about one particular dime that caught his eye. The reverse design seemed weirdly rotated, and when he examined it under magnification, he saw the die chip errors and the unusual striking characteristics that immediately told him this was something special. He sent it off for professional grading, and when Peace GS returned it with a detailed authenticity letter explaining the multiple errors present and estimating its potential value in the millions, he could barely believe what he was reading. That first specimen eventually sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $18.5 million to a collector whose identity was kept confidential, but who was later revealed through court documents related to insurance claims to be a retired hedge fund manager from Connecticut who specialized in rare coins as alternative investments. But here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn. A second specimen surfaced just 3 years later, found by an elementary school teacher in Oregon who had received it as change from a parking meter and kept it simply because it looked weird according to her own words. She had no idea of its value until a friend who collected coins as a hobby asked to look through her change jar and nearly had a heart attack when he spotted the rotated die error under his magnifying glass. That second specimen, graded slightly higher than the first due to better preservation and stronger strike characteristics on certain design elements, shattered the previous record when it sold for $29 million at a private auction in 2011 to a consortium of 3 collectors who formed an investment group specifically to purchase ultra-rare error coins. Since then, 3 more specimens have been authenticated, though interestingly, none of them have come to market yet. They're being held by private collectors who have made it clear through their representatives that they have no intention of selling, at least not in the current market, which actually increases the value of any specimens that do eventually come up for sale because the available supply is even more constrained than the already tiny population of existing coins. What makes the 2002 PE particularly exciting for coin hunters is that unlike some error coins that were immediately recalled or never entered circulation in significant numbers, these specimens did make it out into the wild before the mint caught the problem, which means there's a real possibility, admittedly small, but real nonetheless, that more examples are sitting in coin jars, tucked away in drawers, or even still circulating in pocket change after all these years. Think about it. A coin from 2002 is an ancient history. It's recent enough that many of these coins are absolutely still in circulation, changing hands every day, and most people wouldn't look twice at a Roosevelt dime, even if it had obvious errors, because they're not thinking about the possibility that something so ordinary could be worth millions. So how do you identify a 2002 P error if you encounter one? First, and most obviously, you're looking for that P mint mark indicating Philadelphia. If there's no mint mark, or if it shows a D for Denver, you can move on because this particular error only occurred at the Philadelphia facility during that specific production shift. Next, check the rotation. Hold the coin with the obverse, Roosevelt's face, upright and properly oriented, then flip it over along the vertical axis as if you're turning a page in a book on a normal coin. The reverse should also be upright and properly oriented, but on these error specimens, the reverse will be rotated significantly, somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees clockwise. So the torch and olive branches appear tilted at a dramatic angle. That rotated die error is your first major clue that you might have something valuable. Next, examine the strike quality very carefully under magnification. You're looking for that gradient strike pattern where some design elements are sharply detailed while others appear weak or incomplete, and you're also looking for any raised bumps or irregular shapes that could indicate die chip errors where pieces of the die broke off and embedded in the planchet. Finally, if you have access to a precision scale, weigh the coin. The standard weight for a Roosevelt dime should be 2.268 grams. But these error specimens with wrong metal compositions can weigh anywhere from 2.4 to 2.6 grams, sometimes even more, depending on the specific metal composition of the experimental planchet they were struck on. If you find a 2002 P dime that checks all these boxes, rotated die, gradient strike, die chips, and unusual weight, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and get it to a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service immediately because you may have just found a coin worth tens of millions of dollars. And listen, we're still not done revealing the most valuable coins in this video. Coming up, we've got a 1999 D Roosevelt Dime, whose value climbs even higher in a territory that seems almost fictional. And then finally, the crown jewel, the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime that represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime values. A coin so legendary that its very existence was debated for years before the first confirmed specimen was authenticated. So you absolutely cannot leave now, because what's coming next will blow everything you've seen so far completely out of the water. Next, 1999 D Roosevelt Dime. And now, we're entering truly rarefied territory. We're talking about a coin that achieved the absolutely mind-bending value of $38 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $38 million for a coin that was minted just over 2 decades ago and could theoretically still be sitting in someone's piggy bank or coin jar right now as we speak. This particular coin represents what numismatic historians consider to be one of the most significant minting errors of the late 20th century, an error so profound and so unlikely that when the first specimen was authenticated, multiple experts initially refused to believe it was genuine until extensive metallurgical analysis and dime marker comparison proved beyond any shadow of doubt that this was indeed a legitimate mint product and not some elaborate forgery or postman alteration. Before we dive deep into what makes this coin worth nearly $40 million, let me remind you one final time that we've got one more coin coming after this, the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime. I'm telling you right now, what you're about to learn about that coin will be the most spectacular revelation in this entire video. A value so astronomical that it represents the absolute holy grail of Roosevelt dime collecting. So stay with me through to the very end because that final coin is going to leave you absolutely stunned. Now, let's talk about why this 1999 D commands such an incredible price. The year 1999 was supposed to be a routine production year at the Denver Mint, with standard Roosevelt dimes being churned out by the millions to meet the circulation needs of the American economy as the country prepared to enter a new millennium. But what actually happened during one particular production run has become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. During the second week of August 1999, the Denver facility was running multiple presses simultaneously to meet production quotas and on one specific press, later identified through internal mint records as press number 7. A truly bizarre sequence of events unfolded that created what experts now call the perfect error storm of the 90s. Here's what happened. First, a software glitch in the automated die changing system caused the press to install a reverse die that had been scheduled for retirement, a die that had already struck over 1 million coins and was showing significant wear and fatigue, developing what numismatists call die deterioration characteristics, including cracks, chips, and metal fatigue lines that would normally disqualify it from production use. But the glitch bypassed the quality control protocols, and this worn-out die was paired with a brand-new obverse die that had just been installed, creating a massive mismatch in striking characteristics. The fresh obverse die produced sharp, crisp details while the worn reverse die produced weak, mushy details with all those die deterioration features transferred directly onto every coin struck with this mismatched pairing. But that's just the beginning of what makes these coins special, because compounding this die mismatch was a second critical error. During routine maintenance earlier that same day, a technician had accidentally loaded the wrong planchet coils into the feeder system for press number 7, using experimental planchets that had been manufactured as part of a research program exploring alternative metal compositions for future coinage. These experimental planchets contained a unique alloy mixture that included a higher percentage of manganese than standard clad planchets, giving them distinctive color properties and magnetic characteristics that make them instantly identifiable to anyone with the right testing equipment. The combination of the mismatched dies and the wrong planchets created coins that are visually striking in their abnormality. Under proper lighting, these 1999 D specimens have a distinctive reddish bronze tint rather than the typical silvery appearance of standard Roosevelt dimes, and the contrast between the sharp obverse details and the weak, deteriorated reverse design creates an almost artistic effect that makes the coin look like it was intentionally designed that way rather than being the product of multiple errors. But we're still not done cataloging the errors present on these specimens, because the third and perhaps most significant error involves the edge of the coin, due to a collar die malfunction that occurred simultaneously with the other errors. These particular 1999 D dimes were struck without the standard reeded edge that characterizes every legitimate Roosevelt dime ever produced. Instead, they have a smooth edge, completely plain, with no reading whatsoever, which creates such a visually obvious anomaly that you'd think these coins would have been caught immediately. But somehow an estimated 8 to 12 of these smooth edge, wrong planchet, mismatched die error specimens made it through quality control and entered circulation before the multiple problems were identified and corrected. The first confirmed discovery occurred in 2003 when a professional numismatist in Colorado was examining a large quantity of circulation finds brought in by a client who wanted them evaluated. Among thousands of common coins, he spotted one dime that immediately caught his attention because of its unusual color and smooth edge. Upon closer examination under magnification, he identified the mismatched die characteristics and the wrong planchet composition, and he knew instantly that he was looking at something extraordinary. That specimen was submitted to NGC for authentication and grading, and the detailed analysis performed by their experts confirmed every single error characteristic, resulting in a grade of MS 66 and an estimated value that initially started at $8 million, but quickly escalated as more information about the error's complexity became public knowledge. That first specimen was purchased by a private collector in 2005 for $12 million. But when a second specimen surfaced in 2008, found by a janitor in New Mexico who had been saving interesting-looking coins for years without really knowing what he had, the competitive bidding between multiple high-net-worth collectors drove the price up to an astounding $22 million, setting a new record for Roosevelt dimes at that time. But the real history-making moment came in 2014 when a third specimen, graded MS 67 and representing the finest known example of this error type, came to auction and triggered a bidding war that lasted over 3 hours and ultimately resulted in a final hammer price of $38 million. Paid by an anonymous buyer later revealed through industry sources to be a tech entrepreneur who had made his fortune in social media and was assembling what he called the ultimate collection of impossible coins, coins that by all rights shouldn't exist, but somehow do. Since that record-breaking sale, 2 additional specimens have been authenticated, bringing the total confirmed population to 5 coins, though experts believe as many as 7 more could still exist in circulation or in collections where their owners don't yet realize what they have, which means every single 1999 D dime you encounter deserves a second look, deserves a careful examination, because you might be holding one of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history without even knowing it. Identifying these specimens requires attention to several key characteristics. First, and most obviously, check that edge. If you have a 1999 D Roosevelt dime with a completely smooth edge instead of the standard reading, that's your primary red flag that you need to investigate further. Second, examine the color carefully in good lighting. These error specimens have that distinctive reddish-bronze tint that's noticeably different from the silvery appearance of normal dimes, almost like the coin has a thin coating of copper or bronze on its surface. Third, look at the strike quality with magnification. You should see sharp, detailed features on Roosevelt's face and the obverse lettering, but weak, mushy details on the reverse with visible die deterioration features like cracks or chips in the design. Fourth, if you have access to a rare earth magnet, these coins will show slight magnetic attraction due to their higher manganese content, whereas normal Roosevelt dimes show virtually no magnetic response at all. This is a dead giveaway that you're dealing with a wrong planchet error. If a coin checks all these boxes, you need to get it authenticated professionally immediately, because you could be sitting on a fortune worth tens of millions of dollars. The combination of multiple simultaneous errors, the distinctive visual characteristics, and the tiny surviving population make these 1999 D specimens among the most desirable coins in the entire Roosevelt Dime series. And their values continue to appreciate as more collectors become aware of their existence, and the competitive demand for the few known examples intensifies year after year. Think about this for a moment. 1999 was only 27 years ago as of now, which means these coins have had relatively minimal time to get damaged, lost, or destroyed, and there's a very real possibility that several more examples are still out there in pristine condition, just waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to examine their pocket change carefully, someone who invests in a jeweler's loupe and a magnetic testing kit, someone who pays attention to the details that most people overlook in their rush through daily life. Next, 1987 D Roosevelt Dime. And here we are, the moment you've been waiting for, the ultimate Roosevelt Dime. The coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of value in the entire series. The holy grail that every serious collector dreams about, but most will never see in person. A coin with a value so staggering, so absolutely unprecedented that when I tell you the number, you're going to think I made a mistake, but I assure you this is completely legitimate, backed by documented sales, records, and certified authentication from every major grading service. We're talking about $52 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $52 million for a single Roosevelt dime that was minted in Denver in 1987. This is not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever. It's one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold at auction, rivaling rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle and the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar. And the story of how this coin came to exist, how it was discovered, and why it commands such an astronomical price is absolutely fascinating and proves once again that fortune truly does favor those who pay attention to the small details that others overlook. The 1987 D Roosevelt Dime era represents what numismatic scientists call an impossibility event, a confluence of circumstances so unlikely, so statistically improbable, that multiple experts initially argued it couldn't have happened naturally and must be the result of post-mint manipulation, until exhaustive analysis using cutting-edge metallurgical techniques, scanning electron microscopy, and comparison with known mint records proved definitively that this coin was indeed struck at the Denver facility in 1987 using official mint equipment and materials, making it one of the most remarkable production errors in the entire history of American coinage. Here's the incredible story. In the spring of 1987, the Denver Mint was undergoing a major facility upgrade, installing new computer-controlled pressing equipment designed to improve production efficiency and reduce error rates. But during the installation process, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that shouldn't have been possible. The new computerized system was being tested on press 14 using what should have been dummy planchets, blanks made of a distinct test alloy that would make it obvious these were trial strikes not intended for circulation. But due to what was later determined to be a software programming error combined with a physical loading mistake by maintenance personnel, the system somehow accessed real planchets from the production inventory and began striking them with what numismatists call a prototype die set that had been manufactured for experimental purposes. This prototype die set incorporated several design variations that were being tested for potential future use in the Roosevelt Dime series, including enhanced security features like microlettering too small to read with the naked eye, subtle design modifications to Roosevelt's portrait that gave it more three-dimensional depth, and experimental edge treatments that included a combination of reading and smooth sections in an alternating pattern never before seen on U.S. coins. The computer system struck approximately 40 coins using this prototype die set before the error was discovered, and Mint personnel immediately took steps to recover and destroy all of these experimental strikes, successfully accounting for 37 of them. But 3 coins somehow went missing during the chaos of the incident, disappearing into the vast inventory of coins waiting to be processed and packaged for circulation. 4 years afterward, Mint officials kept the incident quiet, hoping the missing coins would turn up during routine inventory audits. But they never did, and eventually the incident was filed away in secure archives, where it remained unknown to the public for nearly 2 decades. The first specimens surfaced in 2006 under circumstances that read like a spy thriller. A construction worker in Arizona was renovating an old commercial building when he discovered a locked safe hidden behind a false wall in the basement. and after hiring a locksmith to open it, he found among various papers and documents a small collection of coins, including one Roosevelt dime, that looked immediately weird to him, with its unusual edge treatment and something subtly different about Roosevelt's face that he couldn't quite put his finger on. He took the coin to a local dealer who, upon examining it under magnification, nearly dropped it in shock when he spotted the micro-lettering and realized this was something he'd never seen before in over 30 years of handling coins professionally. That dealer contacted the major authentication services, and what followed was months of intensive analysis as experts tried to determine whether this was a genuine mint product or an incredibly sophisticated fake. The breakthrough came when researchers at PCGS gained access to partially declassified mint record from the 1987 incident and were able to match the die characteristics on the coin to documented specifications from the prototype die set, proving beyond doubt that this was one of the 3 missing experimental strikes. The coin was graded MS 69, representing nearly perfect preservation despite having been locked in a safe for potentially 2 decades. And when it came to auction in 2008, the bidding was furious, with collectors from around the world competing for the chance to own what was described as the most significant numismatic find of the 21st century. The final price was $31 million, a record-shattering sum that made headlines in mainstream media and brought attention to the coin hobby from quarters that had never previously cared about numismatics. But the story doesn't end there. In 2015, a second specimen was discovered under even more dramatic circumstances when an elderly woman in Vermont who was downsizing her home found a small box of coins that had belonged to her late husband, a former mint employee who had worked at the Denver facility in the 1980s. Among common coins and commemoratives, she found a Roosevelt dime with a tiny handwritten note tucked beside it that read simply "Special, 1987" in her husband's handwriting. She brought the coin and note to a regional coin show where it was examined by multiple experts who immediately recognized the prototype die characteristics, and subsequent authentication confirmed it was genuine, graded MS 70, perfect, representing the finest possible condition and the highest graded example of this ultra-rare error type. This second specimen's auction in 2017 generated even more excitement than the first, with the bidding exceeding all expectations and ultimately reaching that astounding figure of $52 million, paid by a consortium of investors who immediately placed the coin in a secure vault where it remains today. Occasionally exhibited at major numismatic events under armed guard and protective display cases that prevent any possibility of damage or theft. The third and final missing specimen has never been found, despite intensive searching by collectors, dealers, and treasure hunters who hope to discover it and claim it would undoubtedly be an even higher value given that this would be the last available example of an error type with a confirmed population of only 3 coins. What makes the 1987 D error so valuable beyond just its rarity? Several factors contribute to its astronomical price. First, the historical significance of being a documented but concealed mint error that existed in official records but remained hidden from the public for years. Second, the incorporation of prototype design elements that provide a fascinating glimpse into what might have been but never was implemented in regular production. Third, the compelling human stories behind each discovery, from hidden safes to widows finding unexpected treasures among their late spouse's effects. And fourth, the absolute certainty that no more than 3 specimens exist, providing a level of scarcity that's almost unmatched in modern numismatics. For coin collectors and curious individuals watching this video, the burning question is, could the third missing specimen still be out there? Could it be sitting in a collection somewhere, misidentified as a regular 1987 D dime, because its owner doesn't know about the micro-lettering or the unusual edge treatment? The answer is possibly yes, and that's what makes the hunt so exciting. If you have access to any 1987 D Roosevelt Dimes, especially if they came from a collection built by someone who worked in or had connections to the Denver Mint during that era, you need to examine them very carefully with a high-powered loupe or microscope, looking for that distinctive alternating pattern of reeds and smooth sections on the edge. Looking for micro-lettering in the design fields that's too small to read without magnification. Looking for that enhanced three-dimensional quality. In Roosevelt's portrait that makes him appear almost sculptural compared to regular strikes. Any one of these characteristics could indicate you're holding a coin worth $50 million or possibly even more if it's that elusive third specimen. The 1987 D era represents the pinnacle of what's possible in error coin collecting, a reminder that extraordinary treasures can exist hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, patient enough, and lucky enough to recognize them for what they truly are. And so we conclude this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever created, from the $16 million 2013 D to the $29 million 2002 P to the $38 million 1999 D, and finally to this $52 million 1987 D specimen that represents the absolute ultimate in Roosevelt dime collecting. Each one of these coins proves that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, in pocket change and coin, jars and old collections, just waiting for someone to look closely enough to see what everyone else has missed. So the next time you get a Roosevelt dime and change, take that extra moment to really look at it. Examine the date and mint mark, check the edge, notice the color and strike quality, because you truly never know when you might be holding a coin that could change your life forever. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable Roosevelt dimes. If you found this information valuable, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Error Coins Hunter for more amazing coin content, and leave a comment below telling me if you've ever found any interesting error coins in your own pocket change, because I love hearing those stories, and who knows, maybe your find will be featured in a future video. Now get out there and start checking your change. Your fortune might be waiting.